Good evening, this is Shugata Bose speaking. Today I'll speak to you a bit about Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Well, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's life is completely mired in mystery. From the way he disappeared on the 18th of August 1945 to the way his marriage has been fabricated, so to say, everything seems to be shrouded in mystery. Well, on the 18th of August 1945, Netaji is supposed to have emplaned at Taihoku in erstwhile Formosa, and the plane had crash landed and Netaji had died of third-degree burns. So the Domain News Agency of Japan had reported, and so the world believed. The Indian government also came to the same conclusion, the British Indian government. The Figgis report also said that Netaji had died thus. Later, the Shahnawaz Committee was set up by the Indian Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru in 1955, and it came to the same report, although out of the three members of the Shahnawaz Committee, one of the members, who was Subhash Chandra Bose's elder brother Suresh Chandra Bose, he wrote a dissentient report which contradicted the findings of the Shahnawaz Committee. The Shahnawaz Committee came to the conclusion that Subhash Chandra Bose had died of in the air crash, but Suresh Chandra Bose's report contradicted it. But it was disregarded by the Nehru government. Later, when Indira Gandhi was in power, the Khosla Commission was set up in the early 1970s, and that came also to the same conclusion. It seems that the government was already pre-decided as to the outcome of the commission's or the committee's report would be, and it was to their satisfaction that Bose was deemed dead of third-degree burns of an air crash. Later, when the Atal Bihari Vajpayee came to power, a third commission was set up in 1999, headed by Justice Manoj Kumar Mukherjee, which after a protracted period of 5 years submitted its report, inconclusive as to what had happened to Netaji, but conclusive enough in terms of its rejection of the air crash theory. Justice Manoj Kumar Mukherjee had visited Taiwan, had visited the erstwhile Taihoku airport, and found no crematorium records that confirmed that there was any air crash on that date, or even within a month of that date. The airport records said there was no air crash, and the crematorium records said that there was one person called Ichiro Okura who had died, and he was cremated on the 19th August as opposed to Netaji on the 18th. And that was not Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, but nonetheless, Habibur Rahman, Netaji's lieutenant in the INA, submitted his report to the Indian government that he had carried the ashes of Netaji within a month of 18th August and got them interned in the Renkoji temple in Tokyo. And ever since, the government has held that those ashes are of Netaji. Well, be that as it may, it has now been conclusively proved that there was no air crash, so the ashes simply can't be that of Netaji. Now, what happened to Netaji? Well, Dr. Purobi Rai, professor of Russian language of Jadavpur University, had visited Moscow on behalf of the Asiatic Society of Kolkata and had stumbled upon a startling document along with Alexander Kolesnikov, a retired general of the Warsaw Pact, and Alexander Kolesnikov, who had entered the military archives near Moscow at a place, he found one document which stated that Molotov, uh, Jacob Malik, and a few others of Stalin's cabinet, they were discussing as late as October 1946 as to what they should do with Chandra Bose, who was in their custody. Now, if that was the case, then Netaji for sure had not died in the air crash, and Netaji was in Russia. In the Khosla Commission, a gentleman called Shamlal Jain, who was Jawaharlal Nehru's former stenographer, he under oath, he submitted a report that he had one night been summoned by Jawaharlal Nehru to take a dictation, and the contents of the letter he remembered, although not exactly in the same language, and he submitted that to the Khosla Commission. It said that, "Dear Mr. Attlee," Nehru is writing, "Dear Mr. Attlee, your war criminal, Bose, has entered Russian territory. He is in Russian hands. This is a clear act of betrayal by the Russians. Do what you may deem is best with Bose. Yours truly, Jawaharlal Nehru." Now, we hear that the original copy of this letter is in the India office in London. What has circulated on social media is a counterfeit copy, but nonetheless, the message is the same. So, Bose had been declared a war criminal, and because he was the head of the Provisional Government of Free India, which had aligned itself with the Axis powers, and he had formed it on the 21st of October 1943 in Singapore, when he had been already given Japanese help. The Japanese had offered to help him in his independence struggle, and he formed the Provisional Government of Free India there on the 21st of October 1943, which was supported by 11 governments of the world, including Nazi Germany, Italy, Japan, and even the Soviet Union under Stalin. It's a very strange thing. At that time, the Soviet Union were at war with Germany during the Second World War, and yet they supported Bose's, they gave sanction to Bose's, legal sanction to Bose's government in exile. Bose had become the president and the prime minister, the war minister, and the foreign affairs minister of this government. And he had already raised, first in Germany, the Free India Legion. Then, he had undertaken that great submarine journey of 90 days to reach Sumatra from Germany, and then he flew to Tokyo to meet Tojo, the Prime Minister of Japan, and then with his help, he became the head of the government. So the Japanese had already raised the Indians, Rashbihari Bose, the veteran leader, who was still then the head of the Indian Independence League that was fighting for India's freedom from Japan. Rashbihari Bose handed over the charge on the 6th of July 1943 to Netaji Bose. And Rashbihari Bose had also raised the Indian National Army, under Captain Mohan Singh, a Japanese British Indian soldier who was a prisoner of war. So with all the prisoners of war, British Indian soldiers who were now prisoners of war with Japan, Rashbihari Bose had raised an army, but later, owing to some problems that cropped up between Mohan Singh and the Japanese, this INA-1 was disbanded, and now Rashbihari Bose helped Bose raise the INA-2. And with this army, Netaji Bose came over from Singapore to Burma, and from there he launched his offensive against the Anglo-American forces. He even entered Indian territory. First, he landed in the Andamans on the 30th of December 1943, where he was handed over the territory of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which had already been freed by the Japanese. This was handed over to Bose. So now he had some land under his control. His government had some land under his control, but not the mainland of India. But subsequently, along with the Japanese, the INA, which was at the forefront of the offensive, they entered Indian territory, and Bose captured a large part of Manipur and held it under his control for 3 months. He had his own administration there. His bank was operating. The INA currency was the provisional government currency was operating. Everything, civil administration, military administration, everything. He was in complete charge. However, in the great Imphal campaign, which has been recorded by the British as the toughest war of the British had ever faced against a foreign adversary, things began to go against the Japanese and Bose's army, and the torrential rains that monsoon. All these upset calculations, and with the tide of the war changing, supply lines were cut off by the rains, etc. And a year later, Japan was bombed after Germany lost the war and surrendered on the 8th of May 1945. When Japan was bombed, Hiroshima and Nagasaki were nuked. On the 6th and the 9th of August 1945, Japan surrendered on the 15th of August. Bose was left with no option but to call off the war temporarily, but he did not surrender. He now plotted to scatter his army, giving individual charge of the forces, like the bank was in somebody's charge, the INA war chest was there, that was in somebody's charge, etc. And he supposedly boarded the flight from Taihoku, which crash landed, but today we know it never happened. There's another account that he was on the 17th August, he was in Saigon, in Leon Prochandi's house, and on the 18th he had gone away from there, from Saigon. Subsequently, when Saigon fell, Leon Prochandi was arrested, and for 3 months he was tortured, rendered into a vegetable, and then he went to Pondicherry. He was taken to Pondicherry. He never spoke again. He lost his memory, etc. Most probably, they wanted to extract some information about Bose. The French files reveal that Bose had also been probably arrested by the French police, but had escaped from the French Indochina French prison and gone somewhere. Another account is that Colonel Nizamuddin had driven him to Russia, and there he was a guest of Stalin, and there he stayed, and sometime around 1949, 50 or 51, he came away from Russia and went through China and finally entered India. And then he settled in a place called Nimsar or Naimisharanya, and then Brahmakund, Basti, Lucknow, Ayodhya, Faizabad, and then apparently he was a sadhu now, he was a mendicant monk. He used to shift from one place to another place, and very many influential people used to visit him, including the ex-UP Chief Minister Sundaranand, and then ex-INA officers used to visit him, and ex-revolutionaries like Leela Roy, Pavitra Mohan Roy, the INA intelligence service chief. All these people used to visit him, and that is how he maintained an incognito status. He was a spiritual personality. Finally, on the 16th of September, he apparently died, but people say he vanished again into thin air, and somebody's body was cremated, which is claimed to be his body, but there is no proof. People claim, his devotees claim, that he is still alive at the age of 122, and that he will come back again. Well, we don't know anything. He even had never married, but that we will discuss in another thing. His life is shrouded in mystery, and we will discuss it some other day. Jai Hind.